Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one! Another one!
Oladipo!
One! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three, and
he hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. It is Tuesday here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Looks like it's going to be a sunny sky out there. Dustin Schutte jumping in on with us today instead of Thursday. He's going to swap spots with Kevin Brockway. So how are you, Mr. Schutte?
I'm doing great. I'm not as good as I have been the past month playing golf in the fun sun, but I guess all good things have to come to an end, right?
Yeah, after what, 6 weeks?
No, I was there for 1 month and played 6 rounds of golf.
Yeah, it's a rough life. It's a rough life. I feel bad for you, man. Feel bad for you. I was just back here not doing the thing, just sitting on my butt. No, just kidding. Hope it was fun. As a matter of fact, I am heading to Florida Thursday morning, early. But I'm not going down to play golf. I'm going down to work, watch Jalen Hood-Schifino and Monteverde play this weekend in a tournament at their place. Looking forward to that and getting all that back to everybody. Lots to talk about today, man. Talk about everything. The NFL overtime rules. Why is it that it always takes something so – they always have dumb rules, and it takes a game like this for them finally to change a stupid rule? And I'm speaking of the overtime rule in which it allowed Kansas City to beat Buffalo without Josh Allen ever touching the ball in overtime. It sucks. I mean, for a classic game like that, that's not how those games should end. Dustin?
Right. I agree. I think college has the better overtime, or it did have the better overtime until they revamped it. And then they did the swapping 2-point conversion plays. I understand that you're trying to, cut down on the amount of time you're spending on the field and player injuries and all that, player safety. But I think you could do that to some degree in the NFL. Now, the question is, does that game ever end if you give both teams the ball at, let's say, the 45 or 50-yard line? Or maybe you just play another complete quarter. I don't really know what the answer is, but the idea that just one team gets to touch the ball, and if they drive down and they score, it's over. I haven't liked it for years. I've always thought the college rule was better, and then you just modify it.
Is there any other sport? Is there any sport in which there is an overtime period and a team does not get an opportunity to participate?
Not that I'm aware of, because I mean, you look at some
and
of
all the sports, this is one of the most popular in the entire country.
Right. I mean, you go extra innings in baseball, both teams get to bat. You look at basketball, obviously, it's a 5-minute overtime. Soccer and hockey, same kind of thing. I can't think of anything.
There's a reason. There's
Right.
a reason, and there is a damn reason for that. You cannot have a legitimate overtime in which one team is not allowed to participate offensively. I mean, it's just not. Now, there's discussions that are going all day long. Well, how could they let them get down there that quickly? Why didn't they do this, do that, yada, yada? Yeah, you can do with all that. I don't care. That still doesn't change the fact it's a stupid rule. Needs to change.
Well, I mean, yes, but that's really a different point, right? Like, people that are complaining about, Buffalo obviously lost that game. All they had to do was keep Kansas City out of field goal range for 13 seconds. Absolutely. Like, Buffalo lost that game. I don't think anybody's arguing that, but this is a different argument. It's, why should one team basically be at the mercy of a coin flip? And you can make the argument that your defense needs to step up, but the way Buffalo's offense was playing, I would have loved to have seen that game continue to go on, but hopefully there's some sort of rule change or alteration. They fixed it a little bit in the terms of if a team settles for, I don't even understand. It doesn't make sense to me. Why, if your defense, if you hold them to a field goal, then why does the offense get a chance in that regard, but not if they give up a touchdown? It really doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I guess
no, it doesn't. I have no idea. Yeah, I have no idea what in the hell the determination was. Well, if they score this versus that,
right?
What the frick does that have to do with the other? Who cares?
Right.
The other team should also have the opportunity to score a touchdown. Right. At least one.
It makes no sense to me. It would be like in basketball, if you only gave up a 2-point shot, then the other team gets down and gets a chance to hit a 3. But if you give up a 3-pointer, the game's over. It makes no sense when you consider it in any other sport.
Yeah, no understanding. Greg Jackson will be along with us today at no. What? I got a text this morning. I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, all kinds of stuff going on in college football. In Indiana, of course, we're going to talk about this. Staff changes, Tom Allen calling the defense, a lot of stuff. We'll get into all that because that's a lot more to unpack. New personnel staff introduced. How about out at Arizona State? Herm Edwards is starting to build a coaching cupboard, I guess you'd say. He's of NFL proportions. He has on staff already Herm Edwards. Herm Edwards is the head coach, of course, with NFL experience, but he has Marvin Lewis, former coach of the Bengals, on there, and he has just added Brian Billick as an offensive consultant, so to speak. Great. But I wonder if he should turn towards someone with more collegiate experience.
Yeah, I would. It's interesting because those roles are not on the field coaching roles, right? He's basically their advisor to
consulting.
The head coach.
Consulting.
So it makes me wonder, and I don't know the rules and how all this works, but it makes me wonder. Hey, when I bring a recruit to campus and Brian Billick's sitting there with his Super Bowl ring on, how much of a recruiting pitch is that? How much of a recruiting pitch is it that Marvin Lewis is on staff, having coached the Cincinnati Bengals? Even though he was fairly successful, but he couldn't win a playoff game. But still, I think.
Well, in both Brian Billick had success. He
did,
and so it's not that they don't have experience. And I don't buy the fact that you can't go from pro to college. That's horse crap. Now there are different schemes and things like that change, but as far as the coaching and all of that, I think that they definitely are thinking ahead of the game, but you've got to have the players. He seems to be putting a lot of emphasis on one end of it. Do you have the players to do this? Are you putting that kind of emphasis on recruiting? And that's what I wonder, being a pro guy where you don't have to do that, where you have a GM who just goes out and gets you the guys. Is he still grasping the fact that this is a recruiting-based type thing that you have to build, whether it's through the portal or recruiting? But not that I care. It's Arizona State, but it's something to talk about.
Well, I that's why I go back and I think that when you have those kind of names in your building, I think it's going to draw at least some attention, because think about the connections that Brian Billick has. That alone is he coached Ray Lewis, he coached Ed Reed, he coached some of these great all-time players, and that helped him win a Super Bowl. So I do think that there's more of a recruiting aspect to it than anything. Look, I don't know what the assistant to the head coach or the assistant offensive analyst to the head coach or whatever the special advisor title is for those guys. I don't really know what they do other than maybe help with the game planning behind closed doors. But that's why I say I think bringing a Super Bowl ring to Arizona State and having that sitting in your office, I think that is more of a recruiting pitch. And maybe that's what Herm Edwards is trying to do. I think he's been pretty good at it during his time at Arizona State. He hasn't built the Sun Devils into a perennial power or anything. But
they haven't fallen off. They've gotten better.
he's done a solid job. I mean, I think they've consistently been in bowl games. They beat Michigan State in back-to-back years. One of those years, I think Michigan State was pretty good. So,
Do you know the first thing I remember about Herm Edwards getting that job out there? I wish we had this clip. Someone in today's game, the jerseys are extraordinarily small. If you held up a jersey that would be meant, let's say, for a running back, it's going to, when I hold that up, it will look like that is a child's small to me.
Yeah.
It really would. It does. And because they brought it into him, and he thought they were kidding. He's like, well, what is this? A kid's jersey or something? No, because they stretch so much now. Because they want everything tight to you as much as possible, nothing to grab. But yeah, he's like, what are these? He had no idea. I guess they're not using those. Surely they're using those in the pros, but he just hadn't been around it. I guess he had been in the studio, but yeah, if you haven't seen a jersey up close now, they're like, it's like they've shrunk. It's like something that comes out of the dryer that has shrunk in 4 sizes, except it stretches right back.
You know what's funny is, have you ever seen those videos on whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or wherever? And those guys, in the NFL, they'll try to take their jersey or their shoulder pads off and take their jersey off the shoulder pads and, hand it over to their friend or whatever after the games to try to see those guys take it off. I mean, they get stuck halfway and they're just bent over trying to.
Well,
it looks like
you just take the entire pads and everything off. It all goes off in one piece. Because that's how you put it on. You have to sit there and basically wedge that thing over, and then you just put it on in one piece. Actually, it makes it a lot easier because it stretches it out for you when you go to put it on by putting it over the shoulder pads. But yeah, these things are. I wish they'd had them when I played, because we had those mesh that you could not. No, if you put them between 2 cranes, you couldn't stretch these things.
Nope.
They would not give it on. You want to talk about hanging a finger in that? Oh, brother. I mean, let me tell you, it doesn't go well for you. It doesn't give. This stuff is, it's just, everything is so much better today. Uniforms, everything. Seriously. Of course,
locker
it makes
rooms.
sense.
That's a big thing to me, is locker rooms.
Unless you're at Iowa.
Well, but that's the visiting locker room. So that's understandable. Or Purdue even. Remember when Jim Harbaugh went on that rant a few years ago?
Luke's a Rams fan. Luke, I grew up a Rams fan, man. LA Rams fan. And until when they moved to St. Louis, I don't know what it was. I was kind of waning because I was getting busy in life anyway. And, LA Rams are far away, but they had been my team since I was a kid. My cousin had been a fan for whatever reason. So, but they moved to St. Louis, and it just, I don't know. I just dropped them. Like a bad habit, man. But glad to see you, Luke's carrying on the tradition. Force is with us in the nation. I hope you guys are having a great day. And we'll be back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio as Dustin Schutte's with me. Mike DeCourcy will be on, Chronic Hoosier. I'm sure we've got some clips to hear and plenty to talk about. Auburn is number 1. NFL playoffs coming up. Indiana's got a game tomorrow. We've got a ton to get to. Brought to you by our good friends at Southern Stone Restaurant at Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington, where you can catch Inside Indiana Basketball each Monday night at 7:05 with Don Fisher and Mike Whitson. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration, so smooth with those voiceovers.
I tell you what, you've gotten really good at doing the live reads, and you've gotten really good at.
That's all. I'm just doing that all at ad lib too.
Man, what's the second thing? I guess just getting out of breaks on time, honestly, is the other thing I was thinking of.
Well, it depends on the situation, but hey, I added a lot of stuff yesterday.
To what?
This.
Oh, you mean on our StreamYard?
Yeah. So when we're
it's very blurry though. That's kind of a problem.
Well, that's okay.
I can find a better one. I didn't know you were adding
if you can find a better one, because that is great to throw up while I'm doing the on the way out breaks, because we have one for about everybody. That's more means more.
Yeah. The fighting
We
Mike
have one.
Woodson's.
That is just a great, funny ass photo.
It is.
I mean, that is great. I wish I'd have thought to do that. I have one of those. They gave those masks out at Sunday at the game. I have one.
Did you get one?
I saw they were. Oh hell yes! I saw they were giving out masks. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta have one of those.
Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Do they have to wear masks inside Assembly Hall?
Yes.
They got people walking. They got people walking around with signs, brother.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, my grandparents were at the Ohio State game, and they had to wear their masks. They don't really fight it, though. They're not the kind of people that get pissed off about being forced to wear their mask.
No point in it. Not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
Trying to get to this damn story. Shit.
For Mike?
No.
We may be back before he joins us, but that's fine. He'll be here shortly, I'm sure. We'll go ahead and bring us in from break.
With Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're now a part of the Rivals Network. TheHoosier.com is where you can find complete coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and plenty more. Simply go to TheHoosier.com and sign up. It's free. You can also find full episodes of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on the homepage or on the station every week, Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Hey, welcome back. It is Tuesday and sunny day outside. Hope you're having a good day. Jim Coyle with you, as well as Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition. Make sure you give him a follow, as a matter of fact, at Schutte College Football. Hey, Mike DeCourcy is here. He snuck in on me. He didn't see him. Mike, how are you, brother?
I'm stealth that way.
You are. Sneaky. You know what? And perfectly topic we were talking about earlier that's right up your alley. The NFL overtime rules. It's just been a great topic because it's coming off of one of the greatest playoff games that most people in recent memory and years have seen. But we were just talking about how in the hell do you have a game like that in which Josh Allen and the Bills do not touch the ball to have a shot? It's the only sport I can think of in which an opposition does not get at least an opportunity to score.
I'm told lacrosse might be that way. I have no idea. But my response when someone told me because I posed that question on Twitter yesterday, when people started defending the status quo, I said, well, what other sport would do this? And lacrosse was the answer. And my response was, if we're going that far down into the sports world, then I think that we're on to something that this is wrong. It doesn't happen in hockey. It doesn't happen in soccer. It doesn't happen in basketball. It doesn't happen in any of the sports that the majority of the country cares about. And that's a clear indication. It doesn't happen in college football either, although I'm not a huge fan of the college football overtime rules. I think they're more just. I think there's a better way, but I think that certainly they are more just than what the NFL overtime rule is. We have now had 11 playoff games since 2011 that went into overtime under the current rules. And 10 of those were won by the team that won the coin toss, and 7 were won on the opening possession. So we're talking about more than 63% of games are over as soon as the coin flip is won, and that's just that's it's intolerable. Now, when people said the Bills could have won, no, it's not about the Bills. There have been 10 other games played under these rules, and there will be many more in the future unless they get changed. Now, I'll give Kansas City credit. This is not about them either, because they were the ones who in the 2018 season, the January of 2019 playoff in the AFC Championship game, played the Patriots and lost under the exact same circumstances. They went into overtime, and Tom Brady's team won the coin flip, and Tom Brady was Tom Brady, and the game was over in one drive. And that was wrong. And again, it's a very simple solution. One, both teams touch the ball in overtime. Very simple. Now, how do you establish who touches the ball? Well, since you guarantee both teams touching the ball, that means the strategy is a little different. Being able to put up a touchdown on the first possession doesn't end the game. So I believe that since it's the playoffs, this is not a regular season deal we're talking about. This is the playoffs. So you earn particular advantages by having a better record in the regular season. You get to play at home. You wear your favorite jerseys, all that stuff. Well, why not, if you make it to overtime, you get to decide whether you want the ball first or second? Because if you have a great defense, you can kick off and maybe win field position a little bit and then score as a result. Or the other team might come down, score a touchdown, and then you as the second team to get the ball can decide, okay, if we come down, and we obviously have to match that touchdown, which means we get 4 downs on every series instead of 3. And if they have scored a touchdown, then we can decide, okay, do we trust our defense to get a second stop and then we can get the ball back, or do we want to go for 2 here? So I think those kinds of strategic elements also make the overtime even more interesting than it already is. I think the NFL is too content to settle on the idea that they like the game ending on Travis Kelce's catch, and it looks really cool on TV and all of that, instead of what's most just. And as I said, the Chiefs proposed the last time when they lost this. They said, okay, we want to fix this because what happened to us wasn't right. And it would have hurt them this time. It may not have it may not have ended them, but it would have hurt them because they would have had to then defend that touchdown if both teams were guaranteed a possession. But they asked, they said, we got to change this rule. And among the teams reportedly that voted against the change were the Buffalo Bills. And so I will say this: the Bills players don't deserve what happened to them on Saturday. But the Bills as an organization deserve their fans to be furious, because how could you not look forward into the future and think, hey, what? That could have been us. Hey, we could have been the team that lost without ever touching the ball. And now it is. And so
especially a team that doesn't get to play much before when that vote was taken.
Yeah, but you have to have some vision. This is where you want to be. And do you ever want to be in a position where you do this, you play this brilliant game to get to overtime, 36-36. You do all these fabulous things. And yeah, they did do some really dumb things in the last 13 seconds. But they did all this wonderful stuff, and they wind up losing because they lost a coin flip. You have to understand that could be you, and you have to vote yes as a result. And because they didn't and many other teams didn't, that rule didn't go anywhere. And look, Saturday, for those of us who just love football and don't bet on it, Sunday was great. It was phenomenal. But if I were a Bills fan, I'd be livid. I'd be livid at my own team, especially since they had a vote, but I'd be livid at the league in general for having the rules the way they are.
Dustin, have you guys met before, by the way? Dustin, Schutte?
Yeah, we've been on before together.
Okay, I could not remember. I just want to make sure.
Well, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit, Mike, and talk a little college basketball, because I think the Big Ten this year, with 3 new head coaches, with Mike Woodson at Indiana, Micah Shrewsbury at Penn State, and Ben Johnson at Minnesota, even though the records, you look at Penn State, they're playing 500 basketball. Minnesota, to that hot start, they've only won a few conference games. And then obviously Indiana just knocked off number 4 Purdue a few days ago. I've been really impressed with the 3 new head coaches in the Big Ten. What are your just kind of general thoughts on the way that those 3 head coaches have been performing through about the midway point through this season?
Yeah, I think they've all been impressive to this point. And in Mike's case, he had such a track record. I mean, he'd been a head coach in the NBA for many years and an assistant for 40. No, because he played 10. So he's been an assistant or head coach in the league for 30 years. So in terms of what he's brought, not a surprise, but certainly something that's been beneficial to Indiana. And then Micah Shrewsbury, I heard more about Micah. I knew him before he got the job, and I liked him, but I didn't know much about. You don't always know what an assistant coach is doing, other than when they in recruiting. You usually have, if you follow it closely, usually have an idea who it is that's the direct contact with a particular star player. But the more after he got hired, I started to hear more about some of the things that he did at Purdue. And how they allowed him to help improve the program, and what he did in Boston. And so I was intrigued. And he hired a friend of mine, Brian Snow, who worked for 24/7 Sports and now is the director of recruiting for Penn State basketball. And Brian's a really bright guy and knows basketball recruiting, inside, outside, upside down. And so I thought that was a pretty shrewd move by Micah. And so I've been very impressed by all of that. And, and I think that, they got the coaching change hurt, just in general. The coaching change hurt Penn State because they had 3 guys who were very good players who transferred out: Isaiah Brockington, Myron Jones, and Jamari Wheeler to Ohio State. And that's 3 guys that, if those guys were at Penn State right now, I think they'd be a first division Big Ten team under the previous coach, the interim coach, or Micah. I think all of them, although I think Micah would have done the best job with them of all of them. And if those 3 players had stayed, I think the Big Ten standings would look a little different right now. So I think that he's done a great job having lost 3 guys who were starting quality players in this league, to be as competitive as they are, I think is very impressive. And Ben at Minnesota, they got that great start, but they've had absences, injuries. Eric Curry got hurt again after playing really well at the start of the year, and I'm a huge. If there's one thing I have a soft spot for, especially in college basketball, because I spend so much time with it, it's a player who put so much into the game and is constantly getting hurt. A lot of people get frustrated and angry with those players, and that's to me, that's just it's more in football than it is in basketball, because everybody expects football guys to be impervious to injury. For me, I have a empathy for those players, sympathy, whatever the proper term, because Eric Curry has put so much into being a Division I basketball player, and the game keeps hitting him in the face. And so when he had that great start, that was terrific, and now he's been in and out of the lineup a little bit hurt. So I think that they went out on Saturday with like 7 guys and won a Big Ten game against a significant opponent. That's pretty impressive by Ben. I think that they've done a really good job of building a program culture in a very short period of time that's sustainable. And I think that the second item on their agenda is to start to recruit their region better. That was something that was absent or lacking over the past half dozen years or so. They need to. Very good players come out of Minnesota, and no one expects them to get everyone, but they weren't getting anyone. of those Minnesota guys. So it's important for them to do that. And I think they've started to see some success in that area already.
Chris hit us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline and makes a great point in regards to football overtime rules. If it's such an issue, why hasn't the NFL Players Association brought it to the table to discuss before the competition committee?
Well, that's an easy answer. Well, it's an easy answer, though, because if you say we're willing to play more football, then your argument against expanding the regular season is weakened. So, no, you can't. The competition committee can't do that. The Players Association can't do that with the competition committee because at the end of the day, half their players are advantaged by that rule and half of them are disadvantaged. So there's a net zero there. It doesn't empower anybody. I shouldn't say it doesn't empower anybody. It doesn't empower a greater percentage of their players. Half of their players lose, half of their players win. So it's really more about what the teams believe. They're the ones that have the ability to change the rule, and they have to get Players Association approval. I don't think the Players Association would be against what I suggested. One of the earlier comments was about playing an extra quarter. And while I agree with that in theory, I think that might be more difficult to get past the competition committee. To get past the Players Association. I'm not positive, but that I might go to the Players Association with the idea of, okay, which of these would you prefer? Play another quarter, guaranteed possession, and see what they think. But one of those two would be a significant improvement over the current rules.
I agree. Sam makes a good point too, which I know you touched on earlier. He says it's an overreaction with 13 seconds left.
Not a good point.
Bills just had a squib kick. And I agree.
It's not a good point because it's not about the Bills. It is.
I know
how many times
I didn't do anything.
I
agree with that. How much blame is on them for losing the game?
100%. 100%. Because you can't allow a team to get to the opposing 30-yard line from their own 25 because the ball went through the end zone. They didn't squib. And you're right. His point about them squibbing it is 100% right. They should have. But
one has nothing to do with the other. I get it.
Yeah, you should. There's no way that even the best of quarterbacks and
incompetence has nothing to do with the rules committee, people.
Right. Except in how they execute.
Well, that's not. I was going to say it's not quite true. I guess I should say.
No, he's right. They should have. And honestly, I know it's a bit of a gamble, but if you kick it deep, that's even a better. Kick it deep but short. It's even a better because they could return the ball to, even a good kick return gets it to your own to their own 40. And that would have taken up a lot of seconds. So it would have been incumbent upon that player to decide how far do I go with this before I go down, or do I try to break it? And if he tries to break it, maybe gets to the 40 and they're down to 3 seconds. You don't know. But there were lots of different ways they could have played that kickoff that were better than just booting it through the end zone and allowing the team 13 seconds. But even if they kick it deep and they allow those 13 seconds to stand, there's still no way that even the best of quarterbacks should be able to get to the opposing 30. It's preposterous. You couldn't have defended those any worse if you walked off the field.
Yes. You have to sleepwalk because that is a minuscule amount of time. Hey, we got to take a quick break. More to talk about. We have got the great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Fox and BTN with us right now, as well as Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition. Auburn's number one. Does that bother anybody? Penny Hardaway's not having a good go of it. Plenty to talk about. Back with more on Indiana Sports Beat, brought to you by our great friends at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Everyone needs that championship smile. Go see our friend Dr. J. He'll give it to you today. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Sports on television.
Mike, are you willing to share your thoughts on the Auburn celebration after they beat Kentucky, taking all their shirts off and all that stuff like they won the national title?
I did not see that they did that. Is that on YouTube?
I just saw a couple of them. I saw a couple of them did. I don't understand that. I'm like, all right, whatever.
I've never seen a team that was ranked higher than the team they beat celebrate the way that they did.
Yeah, I have some things I can say about that for sure. Because one of the reasons they did that was because their schedule is so pitiful that they knew that like there's almost no more games for them to lose now. How you can be in a league with as many good teams as the SEC have and never be put in jeopardy. You like never go on the road against anybody. It's it's unbelievable. It's like Nick Saban picking I'll play Mercer and the Citadel. I mean, it's unbelievable how easy their schedule is. They don't have a single team. I think they have some quad ones because of road games against 60 or whatever, but they do not have a single team left on their schedule for that's almost 2 months. That is on one of my top 5 lines in my bracket.
Oh, wow.
And the teams the teams that were good in the SEC, Alabama's not looking Alabama as good as they were. Kentucky's where I think everybody thought that they were.
Kentucky just lost one of their best players during that game. That kind of gave Auburn the victory, to be honest.
Well, but Kentucky has had the season. They haven't, had terrible losses, but it's just there's nothing. I don't think the SEC is as strong as some people think it is. Of course, who is this year? It's a mixed bag.
The Big 12 is ridiculous. The Big 12, I have 8 of their 10 teams in my field. And I'm trying to think what's the last of them. Oklahoma's the last of them, now down to Oklahoma and TCU are both 11s.
So you have 8 of 10 in, and Oklahoma is not one of them.
No, they are, but they're down on the 11 line. The only one that's not in that's eligible is Kansas State, and then Oklahoma State is ineligible. They would not be in now, but they are not. Like Oklahoma, like Kansas State, they're all in they would all be in the picture if they were all eligible. Kansas State kind of took a step pretty far back on Saturday.
All right, here we go.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday, and that means our good friend Mike DeCourcy from The Sporting News is with us. Joins Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, who is flopping days with Kevin Brockway. There is so many storylines right now, Mike. Want to touch on Penny Hardaway not having fun right now in Memphis, I guess is the best way to say it. The man who came in with all these grandiose plans and bringing in all these recruits, and he's just going to run roughshod through college basketball, is finding out it's not as easy as you think it is when you bring in these freshmen. You have to actually coach them up and coach against guys who have a plan.
Yeah, he's not done a good job with this team at all. He did not do a good job in building the staff, although he hired one of the literal greatest coaches in the history of the game to his staff in Larry Brown. But he hired a staff that just he hired Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace had no college coaching experience. Penny came in with no college coaching experience. I don't think you can ask Larry Brown to make up for all of that, especially when Larry's greatest skill. And when I say this, when I say it was the greatest skill, he literally is among the best strategists in the history of the game and the best teachers in the history of the game, Larry Brown. But he's not what one would call one of the best administrators in the history of the game. His programs had problems at every college stop. So you needed somebody who has that ability, that understanding of how to run a college program. They had problems. in terms of getting players vaccinated, that they had a game that was removed from the schedule against Tennessee, not because they had a multitude of positive tests, but reportedly because they had a couple, and too many of their players were unvaccinated and therefore were out because of contact tracing. That cost them a significant opportunity against Tennessee when they were playing their best. They have not been able to manage that transition well from adding 2 elite top 5 freshmen to the team and meshing them with a veteran group that had already been in place. And while several players had transferred after last year, this group hung in there and stayed in place. And Penny's response to difficult first month or so, I can't remember exactly when Seth Davis wrote his article in The Athletic, but his response was to blast his veterans in public, in an article with Seth that got wide play. That's the kind of stuff that's got to be handled in house. I mean, you can't call your players out like that, especially as a group, because you're condemning the whole of your veteran group. If you had one particular player that was problematic, you deal with that one particular player. But if you're condemning the whole group, it's hard to believe that every single veteran on Memphis's team was problematic in accepting that. And he put no responsibility at all on the freshmen to follow the leadership of the veterans. I was really shocked when he did that. And then when he went in and responded to a reporter's question on Thursday, I think it was, of last week, when he dropped literally 4 F-bombs in one response. I just don't think that's the way you're supposed to handle yourself as a Division I head coach. Penny was a brilliant player at Memphis. He's from the city. I know he loves the program. And he was a superstar in the NBA. Unfortunately, got injured, and his career was not what it should have been. But his brilliance for the first half dozen years of his career or so was unchallenged. But you can't take on the media in the way that he did, especially a media that had been almost literally standing in applause at his hire, at the signing of the various players that he has signed. For him to then, act as if the media were the problem. He's now turned the problem into everybody else but him. I don't think that's necessarily the way you build yourself a long-term career.
I agree. And it's not looking good for him, but just thought I'd bring that up. The season is rolling along. A few other tidbits before. I want to shout out to Dickie V, who had surgery. We noted that he had surgery on his vocal cords. Going to let him rest the rest of the year, so we don't get hear Dickie V any this season. Hopefully back next season, as he is keeping us apprised on that. So thoughts and prayers out to Dickie V, who's been on with us, great friend of the show, man. Just kind of the beating heart of college basketball.
Absolutely. I texted a little bit with him yesterday, and I told him that even if he's silent, he's the voice of college basketball, and that he needs to concentrate on beating. He's got cancer that he's working on beating. He has chemo, I believe, multiple weeks a month, like 3 weeks a month, and then a week off, something like that, which will continue for a little while longer. I think that Dick had hoped, as much as anything, there were 2 reasons why he's frustrated by this circumstance. And one is that he had hoped to use calling games, which he loves so much, as a distraction, or whatever you want to call it, from the cancer treatments, and to keep his spirits up. And the other element, he told me yesterday, and this is something that your listeners can help him with. He told me that one of the things that's frustrating is he can't get on the phone and call rich people and cajole them to give to give money to his war against childhood cancer. And he's now in range. If he has the year, if the foundation has the year that they hope it does, of having generated $50 million since he started his gala to fight childhood cancer. And every dollar raised that they raised through the gala and through the process, of funding through dickvital.com, every dollar raised goes to research in the fight against childhood pediatric cancer. So he asked me to help spread the word that anyone can go to dickvital.com and donate to that and continue that work, since he's not able to get on the phone and call whichever wealthy people that he does to try to help generate that. Small donations are great too, and they help every one of them. Like I said, every dollar goes to research in the fight against pediatric cancer, and they've had some great victories as a result.
Absolutely. I remember when he was here a few years ago when Bob Knight returned. I caught him. He was coming from across the court, and he was walking slowly. He's got this damn briefcase. So I'm like, I'm going to go help him. That damn thing must have weighed 40 pounds. I mean, he had everything he owned in it, but he stops. He sets it down on the bench, and he opens it up, and he hands me a batch of those flyers for the benefit.
Right.
To give out. I'm like, oh, okay. So I grabbed those, and I'm trying to help his briefcase and get him over there. But he's always promoting, man. Absolutely.
That's how he stays in shape. That and tennis,
I'm telling you.
He just carrying that thing around.
I'm telling you, it will do that. Auburn is your new number one college basketball team. Do people have problems with that? Do they have problems with Bruce Pearl? Do they have problems with the fact that Auburn was one of the teams in the crosshairs of the Adidas FBI deal? It's Bruce Pearl is not. This is not something new to him. Of course, his departure from Tennessee wasn't great, but here we go. We've got an Auburn team that is now number one, a team that was just a couple of years ago a part of this FBI Adidas investigation.
Yes, and they're not alone in that.
Kansas, Louisville's off the table.
My number one lines right now. I mean, my number 1 and 2 lines include Auburn, Arizona, and Kansas. They are 3 of the 8 teams on my 1 and 2 lines, and they all have intersected with that with the Justice Department investigation in one way,
and all still potentially facing fallout.
They're all in all 3 of those teams. Auburn's case is finished. We got the resolution on that, so we know what their punishment is, and obviously it was not a suspension for Bruce Pearl, and it was not a postseason sanction for these Tigers, and honestly, I believe that.
But didn't they give themselves a self-imposed one last year?
Yes, they did
when they knew that they weren't going to be able to make the tournament. How convenient was that? There were so many people that did that. There is no way in hell that can count. If you're not eligible, you can't ban yourself from something you're not eligible from.
Well, they were eligible. They weren't good enough.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. That's like saying, I'm not going to, no matter who wants me in the NBA, I'm not going to allow you to draft me.
Yes, exactly. I am hugely against those self-imposed punishments because they are used for convenience and not for what they're supposed to be. Now, I don't think that Jabari Smith should be paying for whatever happened there and all that. But I thought Bruce warranted at least some time away from the bench based on the fact that this was not the first time that one of his programs was involved. And I'm not talking about even 10 games, but something to say that, that he could have done a better job. And that did not happen. So they're out, but Arizona and Kansas's cases are still in front of the Independent Accountability Resolution Process. I got it right this time. IARP. They are still facing that. And my understanding is that Arizona does not expect a result until later this year. And I would not be at all surprised. Hey, and LSU's on my 4 line. That's another one that's out there. So there's
do not get me started about that team in particular and that coach. The fact that he is still in college basketball coaching is a travesty of epic proportions to me.
I will tell you that if you read the transcript or listen to the tape, and I think both are available. I know the transcript is available. I think you can now get a recording of it because I think it was in the HBO documentary. It is. I think you have to stand in awe of the fact that he never indicated ever, like even by accident or whatever, and maybe it was on purpose, and maybe it was just like brilliant strategically, and maybe it was just a happy accident for him. But he never said what a strong ass offer was. And if I were him and they called me in and said, "What did you mean by this?" and he'd say, "Oh, well,
you're gonna be the starter, baby.
Room, board, and books. You'd start for the Tigers in the SEC and be on TV every night and all that." That's what do you mean? What do you? That's
we're gonna put him on the cover of the media guide. Yada yada.
Yes, of course. So it was amazing. Really, how I don't think anyone in the history of ever has danced along the line between what would get him in real trouble and what
he will see
defensible.
He'll see no fallout from this. There's no way now because the NCAA, they've already shown that they don't have a propensity for putting themselves in position that they think that they're probably going to lose. They're having a hard enough time dealing with the cases that they actually have to deal with. I'm still waiting to see what the hell's going to happen to Louisville. Louisville is a team that was on double secret probation when they committed major violations. And now they've got things are not going well for Chris Mack. And then you've got the Dino Gaudio thing on top of that, where his own former mentor, assistant coach tried to blackmail him. It's Louisville cannot get out of their own way. It is unbelievable. Didn't their president just leave to go to Penn State or something?
I believe that's I know their athletic director left, and I believe the president also left.
They were without. I think they're currently without both a president and an AD.
It's a rough ride down there right now. Absolutely. And I will add, the only thing I'll add to all that what you just said is allegedly. And I will also say that the one thing, although I don't approve of it, the one thing that gets overlooked in the criticism of how this group handled Oklahoma State in this as all part of this Justice Department deal. Oklahoma State got put out of the postseason this year. They are ineligible this year. And what a lot of people say, well, look, they did everything right. They cooperated. Where it went wrong was that they'd had a problem in football a few years ago. I don't know exactly the nature of the problem or what, but I believe their athletic department was on probation as a result. And so this came up within that window, and that's why they're putting the team out of the postseason, the basketball team out of the postseason. I don't think that you should get punished for what happens in, football, tennis, golf, whatever. They're not the same. It's not the same people. And so I don't buy that, but that's why. And then, so that's why it is interesting what will happen at Louisville, because one, you're right. I can't say there were violations committed, but I can say that they were on probation from the previous violations, and that there are allegations now of violations. And if they are turned into findings, then that will have happened in that window, and fairly quickly after that window was established too. I mean, we're talking a matter of months. So I don't know what will happen to Louisville, but
I will say what won't happen is the death penalty, which had this been, I don't know how long you have to go back, Mike, if you'd have to go back.
You'd have to go back to
or 15 to 20 years.
You'd have to go all the way back to SMU, because after what happened at SMU, they were really reluctant to ever use it again.
Well, because it doesn't just kill the team, or the school, the conference, the opponents.
Yes.
There's such a tsunami effect of that, how it just ripples out.
Yeah, it's just devastating. So they wouldn't have, and they shouldn't. And some other writers had called for it, and I wrote definitively that they should never do that. That it's ludicrous, but they have a very strong case if there are findings that. I mean, as I said, this was 2017. The resolution on the prior case that resulted in them losing their 2013 banner and various other penalties came down, I believe, in May of 2017. And the activities that result in the current allegations occurred within the following summer. So we're talking about 2-3 months. So it's pretty remarkable how quickly that developed. And I don't know exactly who is held responsible. It certainly was problematic. The Scott's comment that dirty wins. I mean, we're talking about Louisville right now. If you turn on the TV last night and watch them play, and you have a problem with what happened at Louisville, either in the 2013 case or the current case that's yet to be resolved, they're not doing well. I mean, it's having an impact. It may not be having an impact on various other teams, Auburn, LSU, Arizona, Kansas, to have been through or be in that process. It may not be impacting them, but I think you'd have to look at Louisville and say it's impacting that program. And it did cost Louisville one of the great head coaches of all time, and it did cost Arizona the best head coach that they've had other than Lute Olson. So I think you absolutely have to say that this is not, although we can get frustrated with various people managing not to be held responsible, I think you can see that it is having an impact on various programs to a significant degree. Oklahoma State, right back to where we started.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dustin.
I had a quick question for Mike along the same lines of the NFL changing the overtime rules. One thing I've never been a fan of is when the NCAA levies down some punishments, is that postseason ban that you talked about. I think that's more harmful to the kids than it is to the coaches or anybody else. I mean, I don't have the answer, but I mean, do you agree with that? I just think that when you're punishing the kids, I don't understand where that ties together. I understand that you're punishing the school for not, keeping things in order. But to me, put the punishment on the coaches, to the administrators. Don't put it on the kids who only have
the schools financially.
Right. And don't put it on the kids who only have 4 to 5 years maybe to play, to not get the opportunity to experience March Madness or the NIT or whatever it might be.
There's a couple of things I'd say. One is that, Jim says punish the schools financially, but what ends up happening is, okay, so we give out, so maybe we don't give out as many scholarships in tennis, or maybe we don't give the tennis coach a raise, or, it never affects the actual program. And so I don't know that that's really necessarily a great resolution either. It's one of the reasons, Dustin, why I've always said that there should never be a postseason ban, either self-imposed or NCAA imposed, that should come after the start of the school year. You shouldn't be able to walk in, and they did this to SMU a few years ago. Walk in November and say, nope, you're out. No, you shouldn't be able to do that. In that case, it was the NCAA. In the case of, say, Louisville, I think it was 2016, Syracuse around that same period, maybe 2015, they took themselves out after the season. Syracuse did it like in February. I mean, you should not be able to change the rules of the game on these athletes after the game has started. That's like coming and saying, okay, now every basket this team scores is worth 4 points and yours are worth 1. I mean, it's kind of what it's like. And so that's not reasonable. But I can say that if you use the postseason ban as a punishment, yeah, okay, so if I'm Joe and I'm playing point guard at State U and they tell me in June that my team's going to be postseason ban and so they can't play in the tournament, then I have to decide, well, do I want to be here at good old State U and finish out my career here and not play in the tournament? Or I could transfer over there to State Tech and they want me and they'll play me and and they've got a good team, and I got a shot to play in the show, then let's go to state. So you have the choice.
Yeah,
I think that may be the best way to do it, because every other punishment that one can come up with, scholarship limitations, punishes the kids. Finding the school ultimately punishes the kids. There's just no way to do it otherwise. They don't have the wherewithal to say, hey, you're the coach, and it was your program and you did these things, and so therefore we're going to take $1 million. They can't do that. It's not like the NBA or the NFL. College athletics don't work like that. So almost every punishment that you come up with is going to affect the athletes in some way. And that's why I believe probably the best scenario is to say, at one point, my response was, and this was before instant eligibility was a thing, but my response was that if you get a finding against you that's severe enough, that every player on your team should be able to transfer and not have to sit out. Well, now that doesn't work anymore because no one has to sit out. Right. So I just think that it should be like, okay, in this year down the road, next season, the year after, whatever it is, you're going to be ineligible for the postseason. And so all your players know, and if you can hang on to them, good for you. But maybe they decide, I'm going to, play for Tom Izzo or whatever, because I can't get in this tournament. So I think that may be the best approach.
We've kept you too long. I didn't get to talk to you about something. Grayson Allen back at it again. Trips another player. This time breaks a guy's wrist. We'll save that for next week. Mike, what do you have coming up that the fans need to go see?
Yeah, tomorrow.
I haven't been able to pull that back up yet.
Tomorrow, I have my latest bracket be released today at Fox at CBB on Fox on various social media platforms, and I have a article on Sporting News coming out tomorrow on Coach K and his recruiting and what it's like to be recruited by the guy who's won more games than anybody ever has.
And that will be something definitely must-see reading. College basketball is going to be weird without Mike Krzyzewski. It's just, we see it every year. Somebody leaves, but that guy's been around since I was a kid, man. I remember 1978. It just that's when it started in my mind. And those people that are around so long, when they leave, it stinks whether they're yours or not. But we got to let you go, brother. Thank you so much, Mike. Safe travels this week.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Dustin. And also I'll have coverage of Thursday night's game in the World Cup qualifying game against the U.S. against El Salvador and Columbus. I'll be on the scene for that. So the World Cup qualifying machine resumes this weekend. And it'll be cold, and colder for the 3 games. One played in Columbus, one in Hamilton, Ontario, and one in St. Paul, Minnesota. So, make sure you got your glovies on for that one.
Is that an outdoor situation?
Oh, yes. Every one of them.
Oh, that's crap. That's crap. I'm out. Mike DeCourcy, the great Mike DeCourcy joining us. Thank you, Mike. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat with Dustin, Schutte, and myself. Brought to you by our good friends from Remax Realty. Cheryl Sizemore, if you are looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl's 2 decades of experience. That could be the difference in you getting the home you want or not. Reach out to Cheryl. Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
If you're in the market for... Okay, so...
Got about 10 minutes here before Chronic.
Chronic's at 9:50, all right.
Oh, man.
And then 10:10 to out.
Is empty.
Do we have any more clips we need to play?
We have the other Maurice Creek if you want it. It's about the TBT.
Sure.
Yeah, you can do that right now since you got about.
Yeah, that would be a good. That's actually a good clip to throw out too. That's something that, you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
IU / and the title needs to be IU TBT ? You know what I'm saying? On the
Oh, you're talking about if it's an actual clip.
yes,
post.
it's
I see what you're saying.
that would be a good clip to make sure we have.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it! I need to get. I know who I could get to start one. I got a guy. He'll start the team.
What are you starting?
TBT team.
TBT?
Yeah.
Throwback Thursday?
Tournament, man. The basketball tournament.
That's literally what it's called.
Oh.
The basketball tournament.
Does Indiana not have one?
No,
Nope.
They have a couple players that have played in it, but never an Indiana team.
Really? That's surprising.
Maurice Creek plays in it every year. Jordan Hulls has played in it. I think Christian Watford's played in it. That might be it, though. Did Will Sheehy play in it?
I have no idea, man.
I feel like Will Sheehy might have played in it as well, but other than those four, I don't really know.
Let's see. Purdue usually has one. Ohio State, Illinois.
Purdue does?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't think Michigan does. I don't think Michigan State does.
Was it Chris?
I know Marquette does. They're always really good. All right, here we go.
Looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty at cheryl@indyhomepros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl@indyhomepros.com. This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. It is a sunny Tuesday here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio. How are you? Dustin Schutte with me from Southern Tradition. I wanted to talk about this with Mike, but Grayson Allen back at it, tripped Alex Caruso, who ends up breaking his wrist. Grayson Allen gets a 1-game suspension. I have one question. How in the hell is someone not beat Grayson Allen's ass?
Yep.
I mean, getting away with that in college is one thing. The NBA is a whole nother. I'm serious. I don't know how he has not gotten his butt just handed to him.
Here's the thing that I think needs to be a rule, and I didn't see the play. I don't know the game. I've seen some clips of things he's done this past season. So I don't know what it was whistled, whether it was a flagrant 1, flagrant 2. I don't know what the call was. But if you ever watch the NBA on TNT, Kenny the Jet Smith has a great idea for punishment. And that is, if you are the offender, then, and it's egregious, it's an intentional foul. I mean, you can convincingly, accidents happen in sports, in basketball, football. Sometimes it's unintentional. But in basketball, you can usually tell if it's deliberate or not. If you hurt somebody and they miss 10 games, you should have to sit out those 10 games, and then maybe even more after that, maybe an additional 1 or 2. Why is it fair that the person who intentionally fouls somebody and hurts someone gets a 2 to 3 game suspension or 1 game suspension in this case, and the other guy might miss the rest of the season? Like, no, if that guy misses the season, then the offender needs to miss the rest of the season as well. That's one rule, I think, especially in the professional ranks. College basketball, maybe, you could probably work that around. But I think in the NBA, it makes more sense to do it because it's much easier to tell when it's deliberate.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I don't know how it has not been handled. I can't think of another situation.
The only other thing I could think of would be maybe someone like Boogie Cousins, but he kind of a big old bully. But he's about 6'11".
Right.
It's a little bit different trying to take that redwood down. Grayson Allen, little punk ass guard out there tripping people. I like to see him trip someone like Draymond Green. That's what I would like to see. That situation would not end up well for Grayson Allen.
And the thing about this is this is not the 90s or 2000s NBA, because it would have been handled already. I mean, this would have some sort of a fight at some point. But it's not the game that we have currently, and it's not better or worse. But that's why it's not being handled. That's why. I mean, in the 90s or even earlier. I mean, look at the time when who was it that held back Larry Bird so he could get sucker punched in the face? Basically, you look at some of those old Pacers.
Oh yeah.
Pacers, Knicks games, the Magic Knicks, Heat Bulls, you name it. I mean, some of those games were extremely intense, and even if it was a not even an egregious foul, sometimes it would start a fight, and we just don't. It's just not that game anymore. But it is surprising as much as he gets away with that, and as much as he does. And look, I didn't see it. I don't know what's intentional and what's not intentional, so I'm not gonna wait to see the video. But when you have that reputation, and you had that reputation all throughout college, it follows you. And so,
of course it follows you when you keep doing it.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I say I didn't see it, so I don't know what the intent was or how malicious it looked. But when you did it all throughout your college career and you're continuing to have these instances, then that's why that get this reputation. It follows you.
Miss Ellison said he did not foul him that hard. The guy came in kind of weird with a little bit of contact. He was out of control. If it was the clip I saw, he lifts his leg in the air 3 feet off the ground to catch his foot at a sideways angle. If that was the clip that I saw, that was not accidental in no stretch of the imagination. Five Left says Boogie Cousins did not want anything as Zach Randolph. Probably don't doubt that at all. Let's see. Brad Davidson, Michelle says Brad Davidson in Wisconsin is on his way to becoming the next Grayson Allen. Dustin agrees with that, huh?
I mean, he's another one that he's not as dirty of a player as Grayson Allen was, but you go back and look at, I think it was Brad Davison a few years ago when Wisconsin played Minnesota. He stuck was it Reggie Evans? I can't remember who the player was. Not Reggie Evans. That's an NBA player. I can't remember the Minnesota center. The point is that Brad Davison stuck his foot out underneath when the guy was coming down for a rebound. And how many sprained or twisted or broken ankles do you see because a player lands on an opposing player's foot? And it was very deliberate. And then you've seen instances where he's gone for the nether regions, I guess you could call it, in games against Marquette.
And see, and if I'm me, and I'm not trying to sound like Johnny B.A., I'm not. But in that situation, if someone does that on the court, you just lose your mind. I mean, it's I've got to say that I'm impressed with the guys that did not retaliate, because someone does that to me, it just sends a lightning bolt through me of shock and then fight or flight kind of a thing. And it's not going to be a flight. I'm surprised there just have not been so many more fights out of it because of him.
I think that what college basketball coaches do now, based on what you see, and you don't see that kind of temperament, I think they've done a really good job of, I don't care what happens to you, you've got to move on. Because oftentimes it's the guy who retaliates, right? Look at the Purdue IU game. I mean, look at Jaden Ivey through Trey Galloway. He probably should have been tossed from the game, to be quite honest. And then you go back down the floor and you see Race Thompson do the same thing for Jay.
I also there's history between those two guys. I've learned since.
I learned that too. I didn't know that.
Three sectional championship games, right?
I don't know. I just heard it dated back to high school is what I learned.
And I do not believe that Jaden Ivey had beaten him in high school in the sectional. They lost all the sectionals to them, I believe, is what I was told. I think that. So
the rumor, the thing that I saw, it probably was the same thing, but the tweet or the response that I saw to that was that Jaden Ivey's team used to beat them in the regular season, and then Trey Galloway would end up getting the best of them in the sectional or the turn or whatever.
When it mattered.
Yeah. So, but the point is imagine if Trey Galloway responds to that. Instead, he just moved on about his business. Jaden Ivey then, when he gets taken down by Race Thompson, if he responds, he's tossed from the game. So I think that coaches, for the most part, have done a really good job of saying, hey, I don't care what happens to you. Move on about your business, because
I'm impressed. It's
so
impressive.
Many times it's the retaliator that gets penalized.
Let's see. All right, we got to take a quick break. Chronic Hoosier is going to join us next. We got plenty more coming up. We're going to talk about Walt Bell. He's set to make $700K as Indiana's next offensive coordinator. Kevin Brockway breaking that story. Back with that and lots more. Chronic Hoosier joins us after this. Brought to you by our good friends from Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer. If you're down in the Clarksville area in southern Indiana, make sure you stop in. It's right off I-65. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration
I'll be right back, Jim.
All right, brother. How are you, buddy?
What's going on today, fellas?
Well, you sound a lot better.
I am on the mend. I'm officially negative, back at work.
Damn, he's gotten through everything. COVID, the knee injuries. They've been throwing everything at him, and he keeps coming back.
There's all this research coming out now about the benefits of cannabis or CBD and, giving you immunization against this. Nobody studied Jameson, man. I'm telling you. It's my cloak of invisibility.
Or the mixture of both, I'm sure.
I mean, I'm not going to say, but I'm just saying, my username.
I'm just guessing. I'm just, the research has not been done.
I'm logging as many pages as I can right now.
Well, if you need physical data, let me know. It's a joke.
No, it would actually breeze through my house pretty quick. Right now, my wife is the only one still symptomatic and testing positive. But the kids are still home because Monroe County is still working on a August of 2020 advisory, so they get to stay with mom for 10 days.
Yeah, I don't know.
It is what it is. I'm just fortunate everybody got through with nothing much worse than a sinus infection.
Yes, sir, Bob. Let's see.
But I did miss J3 seats for the Purdue game that I'm still a little salty about.
Row 3?
Yeah, section J.
So is that that's on a corner, right?
It's the center court side of J.
It's center. Okay.
Yeah. It's just
J.
It is just across from the home bench.
Oh, that's to my right, I think, where I sit. Yeah, would be kind of closer to being behind Fish.
No, opposite side of the gym, and directly, it's basically the row where Woodson's wife was sitting last game. Just on the public side, not the university managed side of the section.
Yeah, so I sit on the opposite side of the benches up in the corner.
Okay, yep.
Which I think K is
10
my section behind me.
Sorry, y'all.
AndyMooreHonda.com.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Dustin Schutte joining me, as is Chronic Hoosier. Jim Coyle along with you. Brought to you by our good friends from Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Make sure you stop in. They have got tons of deals, whether it's 0.9% financing up to 1.9. Chronic, how are you, brother?
Doing well. Glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
You made it through, man. They've tried to throw everything at you this year.
Yeah, you know what? It's we certainly got our deductibles out of the way in the past year, but no, I'm on the mend, back at work, doing well. Got everybody in the house healthy, with the exception of the wife, who hopefully is on the back end of it. But we're going to be immunized AF here. It looks like going forward. So ready to get back to some sense of normalcy here soon.
News out today. Our good friend Kevin Brockway with a story. He'll be with us on Thursday, and normally he would have been here today to talk about this. But new Indiana offensive coordinator Walt Bell making $700,000 coming up this season with a bonus structure that can increase that up to about $787,000. Contract was obtained through an Open Records Act by Kevin. Let's see, pays a base salary of $450, an additional $250 of marketing and promotion, yada yada yada. Okay, that stuff is not even news to me anymore. Yeah, all right, that's where they have to be, and that's that. But the bigger question is, what's it going to be like? A lot of coaching changes, Chronic. You've got a lot of changes on defense as well, with the announcement, Dustin, of both the new DC and OC. But the biggest change, of course, coming is Tom Allen will be calling the defensive plays, Dustin, and that, I think that makes a lot of Hoosier fans happy.
Yeah, I think that him having his hand more in the defensive side again after seeing, and I don't necessarily think that the defense was bad last year. I just think that it got worn down because the offense couldn't move the damn ball at any point throughout the season other than really that Maryland game. To me, we talked about this, I think, maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. But we talked about the hiring of Chad Wilt and how he's never been a defensive coordinator before. So I think that this is a good move from Tom Allen to kind of lay the framework, the foundation, and say, this is what I want to do. This is how we're going to be calling plays. And it kind of, in my opinion, sets Chad Wilt up to be successful at Indiana. Look at what the defensive line did at Minnesota last year. That was probably one of the most underrated defensive line teams in the Big Ten, maybe even in the country. I mean, they weren't sexy. They didn't get a lot of sacks. They weren't constantly getting tackles for loss. They didn't force a ton of turnovers. But what they did is they brought opponents to the ground. They won the battle at the line of scrimmage. And I think that in a way, I know Tom Allen likes takeaways, but I think that you want to get back to the fundamentals, because at times this tackling for Indiana was bad, especially late in the year. Now, whether that was a fatigue and just exhaustion by the midway point of the season from being on the field so much, I don't know. But I think that bringing that kind of philosophy and having his hand back in the defense, I think, is a good sign for Indiana to maybe get back to where it was a few years ago.
Chronic?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's I tweeted out when I saw the news. I think it's certainly Tom Allen's strength. And I think it's certainly a good year to have a strong year for Indiana football. And, there's certainly been some questions about Tom Allen's game management when he was functioning solely as the head coach and not a play caller. So we'll see how they plan to address those issues with those added responsibilities on the head coach. But at the end of the day, you've got to play to your strengths, and that's the horse that took Tom Allen into this job. It seems like a rather prudent move to take those responsibilities back and perhaps reestablish this defense more in the light that he wants it to be seen in.
Yeah, and they just got to get back to where they were just a few years ago. And the takeaways was a big aspect of that, Dustin and Chronic. They talked about that at length, of how they had gotten so far so quickly away from that. But John, I don't know if you have the Tom Allen clip, but I asked him the thing that I asked him was how he was going to be able to balance being the head coach and now calling defensive plays, because as the head coach, as I've talked about, you've got to be in the game, man. You've got to be 2 plays ahead at all times, whether it's offensive, defense, clock management, this, that, and the other thing going on, which is what a head coach is trying to do. I asked him how he's going to be able to balance that.
I've got it. Do you want me to play it?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great question too. I think, Jim, that to me, what I am going to do, I am going to assign one of our staff members and to be able to be in charge of those situations. But I think that the last 3 years have been invaluable for me to grow and to learn. Matter of fact, even as some situations transpired in the playoffs the last couple of games. So I would send a group text out to our staff and to talk about the situations that happened with clock management, different things like that. So I've really grown in those areas, and I feel like my comfort level, but even just understanding, per our rules for college football compared to those were obviously NFL situations, but a lot of the concepts are the same. And so I am going to assign somebody to that responsibility to be able to do that. We already have a separate individual that does all of our game day analytics, and so that will stay consistent. And I communicate with him throughout the whole game about the uses of the clock, the going forward on 4th downs. There's obviously, at the end of the day, it's a gut decision that you make as a head coach, but we do utilize the data to give us a baseline to go off of, so that will be consistent. And I thought that's really helped me a lot, so that won't change. But I think the biggest thing is having someone that I trust that will be with the defense on the sideline, and that will be Chad's responsibility, so that's what, and like you said, we also have from the back end perspective so much experience back there, and guys have been with us for many, many years. I mean, Brandon's been here longer than I have, that's why I feel good structurally in that regard. But I said, like, the biggest thing to me is having someone to take charge of the defense and make those adjustments, which will be Chad's responsibility as I turn and go and make sure everything's being done clock management wise the right way with timeouts and different things with the offense on the field.
There you go, Chronic. There's the answer. It's kind of doing both jobs, which we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, and the thing that struck me most last year, turnovers are obviously, or takeaways as staff likes to address them, one of the most glaring regressions, but just the overall aggressiveness of the defense, the blitzing packages, the schemes that he wants to run. I'd love to see Indiana get back to that and leverage, that aspect of the game, because, when they played aggressive, when they played as the hunter, they were far more effective than what we saw. Now, granted, one of the comments that was circulating around my circles yesterday, it's a whole lot easier to defend at a higher level when you're constantly not having to go back out on the field because the offense can't keep the ball for more than 3 and out. So it's certainly going to be a multi-pronged effort in getting the defensive production back up to what we've seen in the past from Tom Allen defenses. But it's the premise that got him here, that got Indiana, back into a competitive position in the league. Defense is going to win some games for you.
Switching topics to basketball, Indiana now looking to get back on the winning rays after a gigantic emotional win over Purdue, letdown loss to Michigan, and now they have another home game against Penn State to get back on the winning ways. But Dustin DePierre, another friend of the show from the Star of the Bloomington Herald, piece out, and something we've all been talking about is not that the starting lineup matters that much, but it's the rotations, I guess. But there was a stat that I also saw yesterday that the first 8 minutes of the last several games, they are negative substantially, and then they're plus substantially in the waning minutes. But continuing to get yourself in a hole and then fighting back out of that is exhausting. So looking at the lineups, the rotations, Dustin, I'll let you take it the first go. Go at it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, okay, this isn't going to be a thoughtful comment, but what, in my opinion, a lot of the problems during the Archie Miller era was, I don't want to say it was a fast start, but how many leads did you see let slip away? It's probably better to make those adjustments. Like, I think the positive thing that you can say is, even though you hate getting out to those slow starts, you got down. I don't remember what the score was. Was it 16-8 or whatever? You were down against Purdue. You flip the switch, you make some adjustments, and then you outplayed them the rest of the game. And I know that there was some
those adjustments were forced. Their hand was forced in that game too, though. Don't forget.
I understand that, but do you think that Archie Miller would have made those kind of tweaks and adjustments? I mean, I'm just saying this team plays better, maybe not consistently in the second half, but I think that this team is getting to the point where it knows it can win some games down the stretch. And I know that they've lost some heartbreakers. They lost to Wisconsin. They lost to Penn State. But this thing isn't going to be fixed overnight. I just think that Purdue win, you saw kind of the momentum change. There was it was an emotional game. I don't look too much into that Michigan game because of everything that went into the Thursday before. I just think it's a better sign when you're outscoring opponents late in the game. I don't care so much about the beginning of the game, even though you're right. You don't want to dig yourself a hole. I just am encouraged, if I'm an Indiana fan, about the fact that you're playing better in the last 30 to 20 or 25 to 30 minutes.
Chronic.
You know, it's really difficult to look at those two outcomes and make a whole lot of sense of them when, individually, collectively, the arc of the season. I think we've seen a team that's going to go as far as its defense can take them. We talk about the adjustments that are being made. It's usually, substituting two of your five starters. We've seen a huge boost in the team's energy level. We've seen a huge boost in their defensive efficiency once Woodson breaks away from that starting five lineup that he hasn't wavered from at all, I don't believe, this season, except for when Stewart was being benched for some educational reasons. But it's one of the challenges that carries over from regime to regime. This is a team that can struggle to score the basketball. And, it's kind of ironic, as Dustin was breaking down in his column, they've seen an uptick when they sub Parker Stewart out. Parker Stewart's your best shooter. The problem is that the ball doesn't seem to find him early on, or he's been unable to really get going early on in order to make an impact. And, quite the opposite. Usually what you're seeing is you've got a couple guys on the floor that are giving up more points than they're able to score. And once we get into the rotations with the subs, they kind of find a way to level that back out. Now, my problem is for a team that's that has its struggles, and it certainly has its potential, it has its strengths. You got to stop spotting the other team 6-8 points to start the game and creating these holes that you consistently have to dig back out. And then to repeat that to begin the second half, my phone was blowing up after Purdue, considering the way they closed the first half, to go back to your starters and then relinquish that cushion that you had built just in short order. It's becoming a well-worn road for Indiana right now, starting off slow and then having to claw their way back. And Woodson, I have no problem with. It's not so much who starts rather than who finishes. There seems to be a pattern at this point that the guys you have finishing are the ones that are going to give you the most competitive chance, no matter where the clock is throughout the course of the game. Maybe start off strong and try to build and sustain that momentum. And it's hard to refute his rebuttal. We're 5-2 during this stretch. So, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Challenge is, as you saw against Michigan, sometimes once you get in those holes, you're just never going to find a way to get back out of them. And as problematic as that was at home, that becomes exponentially more problematic when you're dealing with road games in the Big Ten. And, end result after the weekend, Indiana's in position now where you pretty much have to defend home court from here on out. And you cannot lose any of those games where you're favored to win from here on out, if you want to find yourself on the right side of the bubble come Selection Sunday.
Yeah, there's everyone. If you're looking at the starting lineup, everyone's going to look at Miller Kopp and Parker Stewart as the two potentials to change out there. But who are you going to bring in? Trey Galloway, of course, has been very, very consistent, but you kind of need him coming off the bench if you're taking guys out. Same with Jordan Geronimo. It just depends on how the rotations are on who's on the floor, not who actually is coming in, who's still on the floor. What's the rotation like? I think that has been a challenge for Mike because we've seen him run 5 different guys in, 4 different guys in. But having people like Michael Durr here of late, he's stepping up. That makes it a little easier for Mike to do that. And Michael Durr has really been a bright spot here of late because they haven't really had, with both bigs out, they'd had a drop off. And Michael Durr, he had opportunity in the Purdue game and he responded well he played well the other night in the loss to Michigan. But he's getting better and better as well, which is a good sign. You have to have a big coming off the bench because in this league, they're going to keep coming at you.
Yeah, and that maybe was the silver lining of the Trace Jackson-Davis foul trouble, is it forced both teams basically to go completely off script early on and basically ad-lib their way through that game. And Michael Durr was a huge component there. And he certainly didn't light up the stat sheet, but more than anything, Michael Durr found a way to play against one of the better front courts in the nation and not give ground. There was not a huge defensive drop-off when he came in against Purdue's bigs. And honestly, he did as well, if not maybe better, than Trace Jackson-Davis did against Michigan's Dickinson, who, quite frankly, absolutely ate Trace's lunch in that game. I mean, we had absolutely zero answer for him. But I think that highlights just how critically important bench production is for Indiana. When you've got some inconsistency in your starters, you've got to be able to find a way to up the intensity, to up the energy level. And as we've seen with Indiana, usually is going to start on the defensive end and getting some stops and creating some opportunities for the offense. Now, whether or not they can remain consistent there, that's obviously been the bugaboo of Rob Phinisey's career. Trey Galloway, Jordan Geronimo, all these guys he's leaning on increasingly to come off the bench. They're going to have to find a way to be more consistent with that going forward because, with the rotations he's running right now, we've seen Indiana has to have at least 3 scoring options on the floor. When they get, when they get less than multi-dimensional, it becomes really, really stagnant. And that's usually when you see the defensive lapses start to follow, is when things get clunky on the offensive end. And that's usually a product of having at least 3 players on the floor who can give you some scoring options and keep the defenses honest.
Something I'm going to bring up that isn't obvious to everybody is Race Thompson shooting the 3-point shot. I understand that Mike would like for that to happen for Race, for his development, but that to me is not in the best interest of the team right now. He is 4 of 29, 13%. Why? He's put up 29 2-point shots. He's put up twice as many as Trey Galloway. He's put up twice as many as Jordan Geronimo. He's put up twice as many as Anthony Leal. I've got to say that's the one thing that I just greatly disagree with in what Mike has allowed Race to do in his freedom, because it's a little too frequently and does not benefit the team, especially when you just basically you can't shoot. Hell, I can shoot better than 13%.
Yeah, that's, for a team that struggled with turnovers and is getting better as of late, they have reined that in a little bit. These ill-advised shots often are just as bad as turnovers for Indiana, because often they, those live ball rebounds come off long and get you in transition really quick.
Your rebounder's out there shooting from the perimeter.
Yes. No, you're exactly right. It's no different than taking them too early in the clock when guys haven't been able to establish post position. I don't know that there's a good answer for it, but I think at some point when you find defenses leaving you wide open, especially in the Big Ten, especially at this point in the year, there's a reason why they're not coming out and checking you. They're inviting you to take that shot because the percentages are in their favor. And, at some point, you've got to have guys on the floor that can knock those down, but you've also got to have guys that recognize that's probably not the best option for the offense at this point. And honestly, I don't know, there are a lot of points where you're going to want somebody, shooting 13, 14%, launching them up, especially at that clip.
No, and to add to that, Chronic, I mean, in just Big Ten play alone, he's put up 17 3-point shots. And overall, Indiana as a team in the league is only shooting 30% from behind the stripe. So since conference play started, their shooting has waned. The free throw shooting percentage is down to 67%, while opponents are shooting 77%. Those are some issues that they still have to get shored up. I think they're a tournament team, but they're close. I mean, you gotta take care of some business.
Well, and the flip side of that coin is you got Parker Stewart out there lighting it up for almost 46% from deep right now. And, as you saw against Michigan, he really didn't get any good looks until late in the second half when the game was all but in the bag. So for a guy that's a shooting specialist who you've selected as a starter, if we're not going to run some sets and get him some looks early on, you really got to question the usage on both sides. Whether it be your front court or your back court that's taking those 3-pointers, and when in the game they're getting them. Because, as you've seen with Kopp and Stewart, if you don't get them involved early, they tend to disappear on you rather quickly.
Yeah, Parker Stewart finally put some shots up in the last game. Catch and shoot. I think I saw him catch and shoot 3 times. He got into a good rhythm toward the end. It was a little too late, but that's what he has to do a lot more of instead of catching and looking. Catch and shoot, man. The dude can hit it up. Chronic, I know we've kept you long. What's coming up next for you?
It's a good question. We've got, I'll tell you what, we've got a great opportunity to bounce back and get a win tomorrow, and what's going to be a frigid Assembly Hall. But I'm just looking forward to seeing, with the schedule setting up right now, with Penn State and Maryland being 2 games that Indiana should be solidly favored in. You got to get those in the bag before you go through this stretch where you get Illinois, Northwestern, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Ohio State. These are the danger times for Indiana basketball, and their hopes for being invited to Midnight Madness, to March Madness, excuse me. So let's see if they can learn from the lessons. We obviously seen a team that got a little bit too high following the Purdue win and came out way too flat against Michigan. At some point, they're going to have to find a way to normalize and figure out what their baseline is and bring it every night, because their postseason fate's going to be decided here over the course of the next 2 weeks.
Hear you, brother. Appreciate you as always. Have a great one, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Be well, guys. Thanks for having me.
You betcha. Chronic Hoosier joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, of course, brought to you by our good friends at Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. They've got all kinds of deals out there. They've got 0.9% financing on Civics, CRVs, Accords. They've got 1.9, or it's actually the opposite, 1.9 on that. They have 0.9 on Honda Pilots and Passports. Great deals. Head out there and see our friends at Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this with Dustin Schutte.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration. All right. I think that Indiana should mix up the lineup.
Yeah, I think it's about time.
Because here's the deal that's starting to drive me a little insane. The lineup has not changed at the start of any game this year, except for when it was forced. It is the same at the half, no matter what. And that reminds me directly of Archie last year, like in the Purdue game where Rob was just on a freaking heater. Maybe he needed the rest because he played all those last minutes. I get that. That one kind of makes sense, but I don't know. Maybe you started out with him again and then take him out and then bring him back in.
Well,
I think Woodson is probably, and this could be wrong, but I feel like he's the kind of coach that once he's got his lineup, he's not going to deviate from it unless he has to.
I get that, but that doesn't make sense to me, specifically because of the stats that we saw yesterday that Indiana in their last 8 games are negative, whatever the hell they are in the first 8 minutes. And it was a substantial amount of points, and they are plus. And there's a reason for that. The patterns are not accidental.
Let's say he does start Rob Finney to start the second half. Does he make that shot at the end?
Well, I don't know. You take him back out. I'm not saying you leave him in that.
That's what I'm saying. So
I think maybe. So. He was on a heater, brother. That was his.
The other thing, though, does he need to make
that
that shot at the end, though, if he starts in the second half? That's the other question.
Well, hell, somebody's got to make it.
No, listen, and that's not the point. I'm saying what Dustin's saying is if he's starting the second half, what if they get far enough ahead? They don't have to. They don't need that position. Yeah,
that game was not going to be a. That game was going to be a close game, no matter what. Purdue was the better team, so it was going to be close no matter what.
But it may not have come down to needing a last-second shot. Is kind of the argument. Is what that.
But it did. So
can we just say that I think both teams should have lost because of the damn free throws? I saw your tweets. I wanted to throw my TV out the window watching that game. Two teams from Indiana, and it was like a combined. It was just over 50%.
The average, would have been around 55%, but for both of them.
I think Indiana was 12 of 20 or 14 of 22, and Purdue was
like
6 of 16.
Like 56% was something.
Oh my God. Be below 60%.
Here we go.
Station every week, Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment is brought to you by Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday. Kristen Schutte with me from Saturday Tradition. 5 Lefts hit us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Says if I were Woodson, I show Trace tape of the Michigan game and my pitch to get him to stay his senior year. You know, everybody thinks that he is definitely gone. I'm not one of those that thinks he's definitely gone. I know that he desperately wants to go, that he thinks that his stock is high, which it is high, but he's not that different of a player this year than last year. He's just a little better at doing what he's been doing. But what he is not doing, he's still not using his offhand, and he still does not have a short-range jump shot.
You know what I wonder? And he came back for a reason, right? He's come back for a reason, and usually that reason
where was he going to go? Let's just be blunt here. Where the hell was he going to go? He wasn't going to the NBA. He wasn't going to be drafted.
That's what I'm saying. Usually they come back for a player comes back because he didn't get the evaluation he wanted at the NBA level. Typically, that's the reason if you see a good player come back. My question is, was his stock still higher as a freshman than it is right now?
After his freshman year. That was simply based. Then, if that was simply based on.
It's based on potential. That's what a lot of this draft stock is. Go George. He averaged 8 points at Fresno State. 8 points, Fresno State, Paul George. That's why I say I don't know what his draft stock was. I don't know what he was projected to be drafted if he would have declared for the NBA draft. I think it might be the same now as it was back then, and it might have been higher because of that potential. Now that he's been there a while, he's been at IU a while, people are saying, they're going to say, look, I don't know what kind of potential this guy has. He has been at Indiana. Is this his third year or fourth year? I can't remember. Third year?
Third year.
Officially,
third year.
And he's basically the same player he was as a freshman. So
he's just bigger and stronger. He does not have the two things that we already knew he didn't have. And the NBA, if you haven't noticed, are full of guys that are 7 foot that can shoot.
Right.
From 3 points.
That's
one of them, and one of them it's not there yet that will be next year. His name's Hunter Dickinson. He plays for Michigan. 25 points, 9 of 12 shooting against Indiana. 3 of 4 of that came behind the 3-point stripe.
Right.
He did it all. How much did he score inside? Steps out, nails a 3. I'm not even talking about 3-point shooting for Trace. I'm talking about just a 10-foot elbow jumper. You've got to be able to pull your guy out away from the rim. And can he guard the big guys? He did not have a lot of success against Hunter Dickinson. He did not have any success against Zach Edey.
Yep.
So, and both of those guys are bigger. But in the NBA, you don't get to pick and choose.
But those two games right there are a great test of what you're going to see in the NBA. You're either going to see a guy
night in and night out,
get on the block and beat you inside, or you're like a Domantas Sabonis to keep that reference, or you're going to have to defend a guy like a 7-footer who can shoot the 3 ball like Kevin Durant or Giannis Antetokounmpo or Luka, or what's his name? I can't think of the Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis. You're going to have to defend those kind of guys, and he didn't do a good job against Hunter Dickinson. He didn't do a good job defending the interior. So where does he fit into that? That's why I'm saying you go back to after his freshman year, people thought this kid can be a lottery pick, and you've not seen him improve. I don't know. I think he'll get selected whenever he declares for the draft. He might be under at this point. Whereas after his freshman year, I think he was thought to be a first-round draft pick. No questions asked.
I don't think so. I don't think that he's ever been projected as a first-round pick yet, to my knowledge.
I'm not saying lottery. I'm saying maybe late first. Like if I was Trace Jackson Davis and I thought, and somebody gave me the evaluation of you'll go number 26 to number 30 or something like that.
If you're a first-rounder, yes, I agree with you. But I don't think he's ever been projected as a first-round pick yet.
Maybe not.
And that's not going to change this year, I don't think. Even though he's going to end up getting a ton of accolades. I mean, he's already been Big Ten Player of the Week so many times. He's going to be first team All Big Ten.
He's a great. This sounds like we're bashing him. He's a great player.
I'm not bashing him at all.
Level. We're talking about the next level.
And whether or not he needs to stay in college. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not that person who says, "Oh, they're not ready. They're not ready. They got to stay." Well, being not ready does not mean you have to stay.
Right.
Romeo Langford was not ready. Doesn't mean he had to stay.
Right.
I get that. Because guess who has better evaluation? Guess who has better teaching methods? Guess who has more people to teach with zero limitations? Guess what position you would be in by being in the NBA, not having to worry about school, not have to worry about this, that, and the other thing. The only thing you worry about is basketball. That is your job. So going to the NBA before you're ready, quote unquote, I don't care about that. If a team deems them draftable in the first round, then that's their right to say, hey, I think we can work with this guy. And they're going to do a lot better job of it because they have all the things that I just mentioned. But if Trace Jackson Davis is someone that they think that can do that, they're going to draft him. But the fact that he has gone this long, 3 years now in college, and has not come close to developing that shot yet and using his other hand is a big, big negative. And I promise you, they see that because they see a guy that can go one way as a power forward. He's not a center.
No.
He's not going to play center in the NBA. And a power forward has to be able to shoot.
Right. I mean, you have to be able. I mean, in this game with his kind of his build, he has to be a player that can shoot from the perimeter. Otherwise, he's not a guy that's going to be able to pound down low and get 12 or 14 points. Like I said, that's the type of player a Domantas Sabonis is. You get into the paint, you go to work, you get an easy basket. I don't think Trace Jackson Davis has that game. So if he's successful, he's got to establish, you said, just get to the free throw line and then work your way out. It's like that old where you start at the block and you keep moving back one step until you miss. he's got to develop that kind of shot range to get to that, to be successful in the next level.
Woodson was quoted as saying that he knows the numbers are in the negative, but he doesn't care because they're 5-7 in those games. It's a good answer. I don't know that I don't care is, but the thing that he had the numbers to come back is great. So, but we're about out of time, man. Great. Tons of great comments today from you guys on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. I cannot thank you enough. As always, man, you guys are great. Been all over it this week. We're back at it again tomorrow. It is game day. Looking forward to that. Indiana takes on Penn State tomorrow night to try to revenge that loss. Dustin, what's up next for you?
Yeah, we have one more way too early series coming out for Illinois. I should have my shooting from the hip column on Friday. Took a break from it last week because of the drive and then moving around and all that stuff. But just constant Big Ten basketball and football content on SaturdayTradition.com.
Looking forward to it, man, and looking forward to be back with you guys tomorrow as we get ready for Indiana and the Penn State game. Until then, I cannot thank you guys enough. As always, big thanks to Dustin Schutte, Mike DeCourcy, and Chronic Hoosier, as well as John, the producer. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we've got no reason to be here every day. We're back at it again tomorrow. Until then, I am Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.